I tried to sleep in our bed, and then I tried to sleep on the couch downstairs, and I was just like heart palpitations, really sweaty, like really hot and cold at the same time. I was running to the bathroom, and I was just panic attacking. Like it was just full on anxiety attack. I was still relying on the CBD oil. I was still relying on the antidepressants. I realized at that point I hadn't befriended wakefulness yet. Like I just couldn't get there. Imagine being awake in the middle of the night yet. And at that time, I realized that's what I needed to do. Like I needed to get there. Around that same time, I watched like a few interviews back to back one day where everyone said the same thing. When they got to the point where they were okay with being awake, not that it's enjoyable, but they were okay with it, that's when things turned around.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Laura with us. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you.
So nice to meet you as well. And just so the audience knows, you actually sent an email sharing a bit of your story. And I think I then asked you if you wanted to be a guest, and you said yes. I was very happy about that. And I know you'd been you're a graduate of bedtime, so we'll talk maybe a little bit about that as well. But with that said, yeah, tell us your story, Laura. How did you start having trouble sleeping?
Yeah, sure. So I'll preface it with childhood sleep anxiety, which I have heard a lot of your interviewees seem to have had as well, which is interesting. But it wasn't anything major. It was just sort of, I think, I just had this anxiety about sleeping away from home. And I remember my first sleepover when I was a kid, I basically didn't sleep all night, or I remember being up in the middle of the night. And then same a couple years later, my first time at overnight camp, summer overnight camp, and I remember sleeping in a cabin full of girls, and I was the only one who wasn't asleep, I think. It probably didn't last more than a night or two, but it's interesting. And then my first year of high school, I remember listening to Pachelbel's Canon on repeat every single night, because I thought I needed it to sleep. But then it sort
Sorry,
of
that's a song.
yeah, that's a famous. I use it for weddings a lot, and I'm a violinist, so
Oh, okay, yeah.
I played it a lot to help me sleep, and it's just relaxing. But it's just interesting that I felt like I needed it to sleep back then. And then over the years, I remember like not having that anymore. Like I would have more sleepovers, I would travel for violin, and then I just had like no issues. And then fast forward like 25 years here, and my actual issues with insomnia started when I had my son. So momsomnia, I guess you call it.
Yeah.
He was born in June 2022. Um, my OBGYN, before I had him, told me, because I have a history with anxiety, which I do, that it would be really important for me to get good chunks of sleep. Sorry, I have a cat visitor
I
here.
see.
It would be really important for me to get like decent enough chunks of sleep, like 4 or 5 hours in the night, to prevent postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And so going into having him, I had that thought already. And so my husband and I would take shifts. So I would try and sleep from like 7 p.m. to midnight or to 1 a.m., however long he could stay up, basically. Then he would sleep from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m., and that would be my shift. So my goal was to get a good chunk of sleep from 7 to midnight, and that's what she said would stave off, some of these anxieties and depressions from postpartum. And then so I think that was okay for the first couple weeks. He was born at the beginning of June. I remember by Father's Day, so mid-June, I didn't sleep all night. I actually, no, let me backtrack a bit. It started with naps. I couldn't nap when I had the opportunity. My mom would come over during the day and take care of the baby and tell us both to go sleep. And at first it was fine, it worked. And then eventually that sleep pressure just became so intense. Like, I need to sleep. Like, she's only here for a couple hours. Like, I need to be able to get this nap in. So it started with naps, and then it got harder and harder to fall asleep in my window, my 7 p.m. to midnight window. I'd be up until 9, and then I'd be up until 10. Um, and then by Father's Day, the night before Father's Day, I didn't sleep at all that night, I don't think. Or maybe I slept like a little bit in the middle of the night when the baby slept, but I didn't sleep in my window at all, my shift. And so the next day, I was, I was already feeling like a zombie because I had a newborn. And then by the next day, I was feeling just like not functional, and I couldn't nap. And I had to pretend to be, we had a Father's Day brunch. And so I tried to be sort of present and there, and it wasn't working. So let me navigate to my notes. And then, yeah, and it was a hard day. I was crying. I was so exhausted. I didn't feel like eating or being social. Um, and then that night, I slept. It was fine. I was so tired, and I slept because there's this there's this interesting little thing that my husband and I used to do, like back in the day. On like a Saturday night, I would fall asleep on the couch to him playing like a video game with relaxing music, and it was just something. I would just be sleepy, so I'd fall asleep, and so I kind of got used to that. And so that night, I had like chamomile tea and melatonin, and I got cozy on the couch. And the baby was there, and my husband was playing a game, and I managed to sleep. And then I think I slept a couple hours on the couch, and then because I had already slept on the couch, I felt like I could sleep no problem upstairs, and then I slept. But then I was also seeing a counselor at the time who told me some CBT-I
Yeah, CBT-I, yeah.
methods, like if you're not asleep in half an hour, get up and go do something else, and things like listening to sleep stories and relaxing music. And I knew from the start, like, the practice of getting up after 30 minutes if I haven't fallen asleep wouldn't work for me, because I would just feel that pressure even more as the night grew on. So I never actually tried that. Um, but I did find some success. And honestly, like, the momsomnia, looking back on it, wasn't that terrible. It was just a lot of fear of not being able to sleep in my window. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So to kind of summarize so far, you've seen, like, looking back, even back on your childhood and early life, there were like some concerns around sleep, a little bit of sleep anxiety, but it seemed like it never really affected your life.
Yeah.
It's almost like you just take note of that looking back, right? And
Yep.
then you have a baby, and then the OBGYN says, make sure you get enough sleep, and then sleep seems important, right? And ironically creates some anxiety when the
Yes.
intent was like to prevent that, right?
Yeah.
And then you have this one sleepless night, and that almost becomes like a reset. After that, seems like, you fall asleep with your husband playing these video games, and I'm guessing that when you no longer need to have this window as your little boy grows up, then there is less pressure, and the little struggle that we had seen so far maybe fades away. But anyway, it makes total sense. But yeah, just take us from there.
Yeah, so I don't remember having another totally sleepless night after that. It was a lot of like struggling to fall asleep at 7 because it's 7 p.m. and like I don't want to go to bed. It's lonely, it's boring. Um, but it's something I felt like I needed to do to get enough sleep to be able to function with a newborn. And then so I would have sleep anxiety every night, regardless of if I slept or not. And I had a routine where I had melatonin, L-theanine, which is like a relaxing um, amino acid. I would listen to a sleep story on YouTube or relaxing music, and that I felt like I needed to do that every single night. And then by August, so he's 2 months now, um, I did develop postpartum anxiety and depression, despite, trying not to. And um, still struggling to fall asleep in my window, but still getting like, chunks of sleep when he was sleeping. I think the pressure was less when he was sleeping because, yeah, I knew he would wake up again really soon.
Yeah.
I would be able to fall asleep for like 20 minutes and then he'd wake up.
And maybe the window wasn't there. Like the idea was like, I gotta get sleep in this window, which of course makes it
Yes.
hard, right? But then the window's over. It's like, well, now, there's less pressure. Ironically, it happens easier, something
Yeah,
like that, maybe.
I think so. And then mid-August I started taking antidepressants um for the postpartum anxiety and depression, and within a week, like it helped the insomnia to the point where I could stop taking um uh, melatonin and all the things and listening to the sleep stories. And I know now that it's just what it did is it acted as a placebo, probably because they don't work that fast. And also, it just reduced the hyperarousal that I was feeling. And so, as soon as I started those meds, I thought they were the cure, like I did. And then my sleep was fine. So
Yeah.
after 2 months of like another year and a half, he didn't sleep through the night, and I never felt the same way. Like I felt fine about it. Like I was still sleepy, not getting a full night's sleep because I had a baby, but it wasn't insomnia anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I just gotta jump in and add one little thing. When you said, I thought they were the cure, and I was, you were smiling, but and I was smiling too. And the reason I was smiling was because, ironically, that is the cure, right? Like your belief that they are
Yeah,
the cure is the cure, not like
exactly.
really, right, the chemicals inside them, but. And just to expand a slightly more on this, like the placebo effect, uh, I believe very much it's real, but it's a little bit mysterious. Why would something work just because we think it works? The way I explain this is to say that we actually don't need anything to sleep or to feel calm or to not feel sad or something like that. And when we take something and think this is the cure, what happens is, like, we also think this is the cure. I don't have to do anything now.
Right.
And that
Yeah,
is the magic, right? That's how I
it
think of it.
is. Yeah, and I realize that now, but at the time I was just like, these drugs, I need these drugs. Um, and then so that piece of it will become relevant to my most recent bout. Um, so
Yeah, just take us forward. So you had this kind
yeah,
of stretch of a year and a half where things were going fine, you were taking the medications, and yeah, what happens next?
yeah. So that's like almost 2 years I was fine. Um, and then in late September, so just a couple months ago, my son was sick for over a week with this weird stomach bug that just kept coming and going. Like he'd be fine one day and then sick the next day, and it just really worried me. And then he had this intense situation where his hands broke out into hives and his like they blew up like twice their size. And we took him to urgent care twice for these things. And um yeah, I was just, feeling extra stressed out from him being sick. And then so I attribute that as the trigger. But even more of a trigger was the fact that after he was feeling better, his sleep just got a bit messed up. Like I think maybe he was scared about what had just happened to him, or I don't know why. Why do babies, like why do toddlers wake up in the middle of the night? Who knows, right? But he had only 2 nights where he was up in the middle of the night and needed us to go back to sleep, which hadn't happened in a long time. And it was kind of a shock to my system because I was so used to him being a good sleeper now. And then I think because seemed to be regressing to like a sleep that was so behind us that it like sort of was triggering to that newborn time for me. And I felt like, okay, he's not gonna, like, he doesn't want to sleep in our bed either. He doesn't want to sleep in his crib by himself. I'm gonna have to like hold him all night. I'm not gonna sleep. And then so in hindsight, it was fine. Like, he woke up at 4. He woke up in the middle of the night one night, and then he woke up at 4 the next night. And then by this point, those 2 nights, I only slept 5 hours, which I thought was a big deal because, again, it was a shock to my system. And I was already starting to freak out about sleep by this point. And then the 3rd night, he slept fine. He slept all night, not a peep. And I didn't sleep at all, like at all that night, because I thought any minute he will wake up. And then as the night grew on, I just became more and more anxious about it. I have a Garmin watch that I'm not really wearing very much, and I'll get to that later. I had a Garmin watch, and it was telling me that my heart rate was going higher and higher as the night grew on. I was watching it. It was like 100 and then 110, 120 by 3 a.m. I tried to sleep in our bed, and then I tried to sleep on the couch downstairs, and I was just like heart palpitations, really sweaty, like really hot and cold at the same time, which was really weird to me. I was running to the bathroom, like, and I was just panic attacking. Like, it was just full on anxiety attack as the night grew on. Because, yeah, I hadn't had a sleepless night since he was a newborn. And even maybe not then. Like, I might have slept when that night. Anyway, and then by 6 a.m., I woke my husband up and I texted my mom. I was like, you guys, I didn't sleep at all. Like, I can't function. I can't take care of him. I don't feel like I can work. And then I don't feel like I can drive. And so I asked my mom to drive me to urgent care, which is like half an hour away. And because like I know a lot of your interviewees, like they seem to go nights and nights without sleep, but I just couldn't handle it after one night. I just like I couldn't imagine having to do that again, I guess. And then so I went to the doctor, and he was actually very nice. Like, they kind of grilled me because what I was asking for was Ativan, basically. Because I just wanted something that would knock me out. And I got extra questions from different people because I know they don't like to prescribe it. But he did in the end, and he was very understanding. And obviously, he didn't. He just prescribed medications as opposed to trying to help me through the insomnia. But I got back to my mom's, and she was like, "Don't even worry about it. Like, I've got like, I'll babysit. You try and sleep." So I went down to her basement, to my old room, and I took half at first. And it made me a bit sleepy, and it made me a bit more relaxed, but it's still like my heart was still pounding. And then so she was like, and then I was like a little bit freaking out that it wasn't just a magic pill. And then she was like, okay, take the other half and then go downstairs. And I honestly really thought like it would work. It would just knock me out. Obviously, now I understand from your program that that's not the case with any medication, unless you're like anesthetized in the hospital, right? Which isn't sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so eventually it did work, and my mom took my son, and then she went to go pick up my nephew from school. So I had like an hour of like total quiet. And I realized when they got home that I did fall asleep for maybe an hour. And that in itself felt like such a good little mini reset. Like, I felt more calm. I felt my heart was going back to normal, like not pounding anymore. The anxiety attack was decreasing. And then that night I slept okay. Because I felt like I had the Ativan if I needed it. And I think it was still having effect too, right? Like, it's pretty long lasting. And then for the next 10 days or 2 weeks, I'd say I went back to thinking I needed to sleep on the couch and fall asleep to video games because I just find it so soothing. Um, and there's something really comforting about my husband being there, awake and not asleep, because it's much more lonely if he's asleep and I'm awake. And then I was also like right beside the wood stove, so it's cozy um and then so that worked. And then but every night I would feel like, oh God, is this the night I'm gonna need to take Ativan? Like I don't, like you feel hungover the next day. I don't feel like I can drive necessarily. Um,
And by the way, just a quick question, Laura.
yeah.
Would you fall asleep on the couch
Oh,
and then
yeah.
eventually like go to your bed, or you would just like sleep on the couch?
I slept like 2 hours on the couch, and then the fact that I slept on the couch, I felt like I could
Yeah,
sleep in bed.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And adding to that, like if I had had a night without sleep, I would hold my son to sleep and he would fall asleep on me. And then I would start to doze off in the chair too. So I was like, oh, I can't sleep. And then so some nights I would rush downstairs, I would put him down, rush downstairs, go to the couch, like get cozy, and then like try to sleep as soon as I put him down, which is like 8 o'clock, right? And that only worked. Oh, I should also say, okay, so at this time, the day after I went to urgent care for the Ativan, I restarted the antidepressants because I thought they were the cure. And I also had been having some anxiety, so it wasn't just the insomnia, but um, so I restarted those, and basically the for the next 10 days, I just was like waiting for them to kick in, I guess. And then so for those 10 days, sleep was okay. I was falling asleep on the couch, like I said, going up to bed, and then fast forward 2 weeks later, Canadian Thanksgiving, which was the weekend of October 11th. My husband was running his first marathon out of town, and we were going to go to stay over at his aunt's house the night before. And so the last night at our house, there felt like I just I didn't want to mess up his sleep because I knew he needed to get a good night's rest because it was his first marathon. And so and then there it just felt like this pressure to like get my son to my mom's on time and like get down to where we were going. And so again, I didn't sleep at all that night. Um, yeah. It was again, I was lying in bed, elevated with a like wedge pillow because I felt like it helped the palpitations a little bit. I took it. Yeah, I took Ativan. Um, and I don't think it worked. And then I listened to sleep stories and relaxing music, but I that all of that didn't work anymore for me like
Yeah.
it did when my son was born because I think I had developed such an anxiety around those things because that time was so kind of traumatic. Like,
Yeah. It's no
um,
longer just a kind of nice story that you listen to. You now have this association with like I used to listen to this when I was trying to sleep
mhm,
before, and I don't want that to happen again. And
yeah,
the same thing now can make you anxious rather than, just be soothing to you, right?
totally. Yeah, that's exactly it. So it was not relaxing at all. And so I think after a couple hours of like trying to force it to be relaxing, I realized it wasn't going to work. And so I turned it off and I just tried to lie there. And yeah, I didn't sleep. And then so the next day we dropped my son off at my mom's. He was going to stay over there for the night and then drive down to where the marathon was. I slept in the car on the way down. and um and that night I slept okay again. Like that was sort of my pattern usually was one night but one bad night, one good night. So at her house I slept okay, had a nice morning. We went for a walk while they ran and then um got back home and this is the night before our Thanksgiving dinner with my family. And again, I didn't sleep at all.
Yeah.
So And this time I tried out of like a full thing of Ativan and it didn't work. It gave me more of a panic attack because I put so much pressure on it to work. Yeah. And then the morning of Thanksgiving, this was October 13th. I went down to the natural supplement store and the BC cannabis store because I'm in Canada, so it's all legal. And I bought some stuff. Basically, I got this sleep, these intense sleep natural, like they have melatonin, they have all sorts of things in them, and it was supposed to work. And then I never actually tried one. Um, and then I got like a CBD oil thing that was specifically for sleep. Um, and then I think that night I slept because I felt like I had those options.
Yeah.
Um,
And by the way, how was the Thanksgiving dinner or day?
oh yeah, it was not fun. Like my sister's family was in town. um, I would try to go downstairs to nap. Um, I just had no energy. I felt extremely anxious and it was all consuming. Like all I was talking about really was that I hadn't slept and um, trying to explain it, I guess, to my family. And I barely ate dinner. I, like it was, Thanksgiving dinner is delicious, and I just didn't have an appetite. Didn't
Yeah.
drink at all. Like they were having wine, I didn't even feel like drinking. Um, didn't have dessert. I just lied on the couch instead of having dessert. And then they all went for a walk, and so I tried again to nap unsuccessfully. Um, and then that night, I think I slept because I was so tired and because I thought I had some options. Um, Let me just make sure. Oh, um, and then after Thanksgiving was sort of the next phase of it, where that week, the week after that weekend, the dinner, um, it was, I wasn't getting one night on, one night off anymore. It was more like I was maybe falling asleep at 2 or 3 a.m. and getting a couple hours, but it was really broken up. And it was just full on, the fear was there. Um, and that's when I started looking up on Reddit and different things that other people were doing. I also had told my work that I couldn't work. Like I felt like I had an illness that prevented me from being able to work. And I didn't tell them why, but I just told them um, I work as like a contractor, so my work is very project based, and so I asked to be like removed from a lot of projects for the time being until I figured this out. Um, and then so I would spend in those days I spent all day like reading stuff on Reddit and like trying to find solutions, and then I found your channel. And so many people on Reddit have such a good thing, like such nice things to say about it, like it saved their sleep. And so I was like, well, that's definitely something to think about. Like if this doesn't like resolve, Ativan had stopped working for me. Like nothing was working. I think the only thing that did help calm the hyperarousal was the CBD oil for me. And it calmed me down enough where I could sleep. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think what I'm hearing perhaps is that you took it, you felt calm enough that sleep could happen. Not necessarily
Yes.
that it made you sleep, but the lack of hyperarousal allowed sleep to happen. Something like
Correct.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm skipping around a lot, but I should say too that I think one of the things that triggered the sleeplessness before my husband's marathon was this seed that was planted in my head that what if the antidepressants aren't the thing that helped me?
Wow. Right.
And then that thought alone, I think, combined with like the feeling of this was going to be a big weekend, is what caused it. And then so after that, it became harder and harder to sleep because I no longer felt like the antidepressants had been as powerful as I thought.
Yeah, which I don't know if you were referring to this before, but this again brings up that point of like at the early on you take the antidepressants and you think that this is the cure. I don't have to do anything further, and that's kind of the magic. But now that's no longer there because you're now doubting them. You're like, are they really the cure?
Yeah,
Like, do I? And you're still in this mode of like problem solving and trying to solve what's
totally.
going on, doing stuff, right? And so therefore they no longer quote unquote work, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And so that I think that alone was like the biggest part of my story is that no longer did I have this safety blanket that I felt was a thing. And then so um like a week after Thanksgiving or so, the next weekend, I remember I was getting a little bit of sleep with the CBD oil by like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then one night I was up at, and I emailed this to you. I was up at midnight or 1 a.m. I was like, okay, I'm going to download the bedtime app. I'm just going to try it. And then as soon as I read the first module, I was like, this makes a lot of sense. This, and it was the part about I think that your first module is this timeless sleep window and setting that up. And and so what I also did, just along with like setting the window and like trying not to look at the clock anymore after 10:30, was I took off my Garmin watch because I had been obsessing about my sleep stats up until then. Which, when I was a fine sleeper, it was fine because it would help me improve my sleep. It would help me like, or what I felt like it would help me figure out ways to like improve my sleep score because he doesn't want to gamify their life, right? Um, and then, but I instinctively knew. I was like, the Garmin is making things worse. It shows me my heart rate when I don't want to see it. It shows me my poor sleep when I don't want to sleep. And it was showing me my really, really good sleep, which also was bad because on the nights where I would get like a really high sleep score, or it would tell me I would sleep like 10 or 11 hours because I was going to bed at 8. um, I would want to recreate that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I took it off. That was one of the first things I did. And then I remember the next day I didn't sleep very much. And on Fridays I don't work, but I hang out with my son because I work part time. And then so I take him to this toddler gym time thing where he just gets to run around and play with the other toddlers for an hour. And I hadn't really slept and I was exhausted, but I took him anyway. And I felt like that was the first time where I was just like, I can function. It's not pleasant. Um, but I can get on with things. Um,
So
yeah.
your reaction is starting to change. If you had prior to that, you probably would have maybe canceled that or not gone or
Yeah.
asked somebody to help you. But this time you were like, let's see, let me try to take him and see what happens. And you're realizing you could do something you maybe thought was impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, definitely like probably if I hadn't started the app, I would have asked my mom to take him so I could try and sleep, right?
Yeah.
Um, but instead, I was just like, no, I'm gonna hang out with him today, and he's 2, so he's exhausting, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And it was fine. Like, and then I followed the modules very closely every day, um, and still wasn't sleeping very much, and I wasn't sleeping in my bed. I was I started sleeping in the guest room around that time, and I was taking the CBD oil every night. Um, and what helped me in that first part of being in the bedtime app program was this quote here: "When your brain is free to do whatever it wants, sleep comes easily." And that really resonated with me because I knew that it was my anxious brain that was keeping me from sleeping, and that fixating on different things and forcing it, trying to force myself to sleep was the thing that wasn't letting me sleep. So, sleeping in the guest room, which is also nice because I have 3 cats and they are, they interrupt my sleep every night. And so this was a way I could just shut out everyone and just like be by myself and have a chance at, you know, uninterrupted sleep. And I was starting to sleep pretty well there. Um, I focused on that mantra sort of every night at this time. I committed going back to work because I just like I wanted to. I didn't want it to have that much power over me. Um, and then I stopped telling people about sleep. Stopped talking about it, which I actually didn't hear in um your videos until later. It's just something I felt like I should do instinctively because I needed to stop focusing on it so much. Yeah.
And prior to that, had you been telling, I
Yeah.
guess, your mom, maybe your
My
husband,
sister,
other
yeah.
people as well, or?
Yeah, my sister and my mom. My mom had insomnia issues, um, especially in her last year of work before she retired. I think it was such a stressful time for her that she would only have like sunrise sleep, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, for a long time. Um, and and so she could empathize, but she still wanted to ask me about it a lot. And so after a while, I was just like, I didn't sleep, but it's fine. I don't like not inviting more questions. Um, and then oh yeah, and then this is what happened. So by like a week before Halloween, I was still sleeping in the guest room, and I was watching a lot of videos, a lot of interviews. They were really helping me sort of start to get back on track. But I had a speed bump at that time. And the reason I think um, was because I had been getting some decent sleep and I didn't want to lose that. But it was also because we had friends coming in a couple weeks and I knew I had to vacate the guest room.
Yeah.
And then, so I tried to go back to our room and I was just so anxiety ridden in there. And, and then, I think it was around that time that I realized like I was still relying on the CBD oil. I was still relying on the antidepressants. And I realized at that point I hadn't befriended wakefulness yet. Like I just couldn't get there. I just couldn't imagine being okay with being awake in the middle of the night yet. And at that time, I realized that's what I needed to do. Like I needed to get there. And I had watched around that same time I watched like a few interviews back to back one day where everyone said the same thing. When they got to the point where they were okay with being awake, not that it's enjoyable, but they were okay with it, that's when things turned around. And so that's when it clicked for me. Um, it was around that time. And then I just realized like maybe I need to like make myself purposely uncomfortable in order for this to like in order to move on. So that night when it did click, I honestly felt okay with being awake, but there must have been some like secret hyperarousal happening, some like hidden hyperarousal happening because I still didn't sleep at all. But it was different. It was like
Yeah.
I was okay with it. I knew I would be okay.
I was just gonna quickly comment on that. Sometimes, like a question I often get is like, "Hey, Daniel, I'm truly not anxious anymore, but I'm still not sleeping much more." And what I often say there is that we can have this what we call like the wonder wall, where it's like the anxiety isn't there, but we're kind of like, "Oh, now that I'm not anxious, or now that I'm actually okay with being awake, I wonder how that's going to impact my sleep. And now the hyperarousal comes from another source, which is kind of the curiosity and the wondering, right? So sometimes that can happen, you know.
Yeah, and I remember being like, What is it about that night that made me not sleep still?" Because I truly, truly felt like I had taken a shift, like my mind had shifted with wakefulness. But yeah, maybe it was that, or maybe it was like this excitement almost about
Yeah, exactly. Same,
making
same
this
idea
shift.
that, the hyperarousal can come from other places, like excitement. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, and then it was only that one night. After that, I remember, like, oh, and then there's something else that I heard you say or someone else say that was really powerful too. It wasn't that you needed to like be up in the middle of the night, like
Or
up and
throwing a
around.
party or something. Yeah.
Yeah, throwing a party. And I had always heard with CBT-I and stuff that like staying in bed was bad. But that's where I'm comfortable. Like it's cold in the middle of the night when I'm tired, I'm extra cold. I didn't want to like get up and do a puzzle or get up and watch Netflix. I wanted to stay in bed. And so as soon as I heard that that was okay, that helped. And so I gave myself permission to reread Harry Potter. Like I'm a millennial. I grew up with Harry Potter. It was my comfort series for a long, long time. And I hadn't read it in like 10 years. And so I took the first book out of the bookshelf and I read the first chapter and then I put it down and I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to try and get to sleep. And if I can't sleep, it's fine. I'm going to read Harry Potter in the middle of the night where I'm comfy in bed and warm. And then that was that. That was that's that's what I needed. That's
Yeah.
like sort of that. And then from there it just got easier and easier. And now it is December and I don't even worry about sleep. Like last night I slept 4 hours. I was up late. I'm a photographer on the side and I got these really beautiful landscape photos I was really excited about yesterday. And I was up till midnight editing them, knowing full well I had this today. And then I was up at 5 for I don't know why. Like I woke up. Maybe my son was crying and I went back to sleep. But I woke up at 5 and then couldn't get back to sleep because I was thinking about this interview and I have a lot of work deadlines today, but I slept 4 hours and I feel fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's amazing. And contrast that to, at some point in your story, you share that there was like one time where you slept like, quote unquote,
5
like
hours.
only 5 hours, and
Yeah.
you were quite worried and upset, and then you
Yeah,
didn't feel well. And that again shows us that it's not about how much we sleep. It's again the story, the interpretation that makes us feel a
exactly.
certain way. And now you're like, there's no story. Oh, I have some extra work. Maybe I was a little nervous about this interview. I don't really know. I just slept a little less than usual.
Yep.
And there's no story around it. It doesn't impact us.
Yeah.
Very
And I know it
little.
won't impact me tonight because I don't really care.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um, and, I was about to say something else. Oh, I can't remember now.
Well, while
Uh,
you're thinking about that,
yeah.
I'll just since you're a Harry Potter fan, I read, or me and my wife read, I think the first 4 books with our kids, and we watched most of the movies. But there was one particular scene or part of the books that really made me think of like kind of what we always teach, and it's when Harry gets the first like invitation to Hogwarts, but his family, like his adopted
Yes.
family,
Yep.
they are like, no, you're not going, right? So first there's one letter and they destroy it. Then there's like 2 letters and then they destroy that. And then he's like, taping the mailbox, right? And
Yes.
then he comes to the roof, and then he comes and he's get overwhelmed with these letters, right? And I was like, oh, this is exactly like what everything we teach about how like when there's a thought you don't want and you try to push it away, it comes stronger, right? When
Yep.
an emotion you want to push away, it comes back stronger. It's like, same thing.
It's so true. And actually, I don't know why I thought of this, but it was this morning at 5 a.m. when I was awake and thinking about this interview. I thought about the movie Labyrinth.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, I've seen that too, but it was a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it came out in the 80s and I watched it a lot growing up. But it's such a good analogy because Jennifer Connelly, her little baby brother is kidnapped by the Goblin King, David Bowie, and the whole movie is based around her needing to, like, David Bowie puts her through this labyrinth to try and get her brother back, and the more she tries, the harder he makes it for her, until the very end, when literally, I don't know, like, maybe other people remember this scene, but there's the stairs that are upside down and sideways, and the baby's just like crawling up them, and he's in a different place. And then finally, she just realizes, and she says, "You have no power over me." And then it all falls away, and she gets her brother back because he had no power over her anymore. She could just get her brother back. And so, and I thought of that this morning. I don't know why, but
It was all sort of a construct of the mind. It was all just like an illusion, right? And when she
yeah,
no longer saw it that way,
yeah.
just
She just
dissolved.
realized, you have no power over me.
Yeah.
And then she got her brother back. Yeah. So,
Wow. Yeah, there's so much truth in like popular culture, actually. So many
yeah.
nice analogies there.
Oh, another one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
My son has been rewatching Inside Out 2 on repeat because he likes the hockey, um, which is a very cute movie. But once you've seen it like 100 times, it's less cute. But it's really interesting there, where it's like so much about anxiety, and anxiety takes over, which I very much felt like was happening to me during that time. And um, by the end, she's playing her hockey game, and she's like putting so much pressure on herself to score so she can get on this team. Sorry, spoiler alert, to anyone who hasn't seen it. But and then by the end, she has a panic attack, and then things sort of calm down and resolve. With all sorts of realizations happen inside her head with her emotions. But anyway, by the end, she just relaxes, and she plays the game, and she enjoys it, and then she ends up getting on the team.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
another good analogy.
Yeah, that was another nice movie we saw
Yeah.
recently. Very well. Oh yeah, I had one question, one specific question about like bedtime with you. Did you
Yeah.
ever try to chat with like Ellie,
I did.
the
Yeah.
what was your experience through that?
Yeah, she was good. Um, she didn't always understand what I was trying to ask, but you know, she's AI, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
give her a break there. But no, she was very helpful. Like anytime I would ask for elaboration, she was pretty good at responding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm so glad because I remember I essentially Ellie is a product of this like 700 question answer spreadsheet I created, and
Nice.
when I saw the result, I was really like amazed actually because she comes up with ideas that I've not taught it, but it
Really?
its own analogies like sleep,
Wow.
like what was it, like sunrise anxiety, like that was Ellie just came up with that. I was like, so it's quite amazing, and
That
I'm
is amazing.
very happy that people are using it.
Yeah.
Um, very cool. And then yeah, I want to ask you uh, if you've probably seen some of the interviews that like these last two questions I have. One is if you could travel back in time to maybe the second time you're having this insomnia struggle now and it's getting quite intense and whatnot, what would you tell yourself?
Um, I would just I would tell myself it's fine. I don't know. I don't that like you had a newborn. You've been through this before. You were fine then, and you're going to be fine again. And I think what freaked me out was that his sleep was going to get permanently sort of messed up, but that's not been the case ever. His sleep always goes back
Yeah,
on track. Um, and I think too, like if I were to go back to having a newborn again, I think it would be so much different this time.
yeah, I have no doubt, no doubt
Yeah,
it will.
and it'd be a much more enjoyable time, I think. Um, yeah.
Very, very well. And finally, did you learn things going through this struggle that has been helpful in like other areas of life?
Yeah, I think so. I think one thing is sleep in general. Like, I think I'm back to the sleeper I was before, but even better. Like I I was telling you, I used to fixate on my sleep stats through my Garmin watch and try and improve my sleep and see what I could do to improve it. Like don't eat before bed, no alcohol before bed, exercise that day to improve your sleep. And now I just don't care. Like I don't even wear the watch at night because I don't want to know either way. Like so it's really helped me in that way. And then it's also helped me like be less anxious about my son's sleep. Like if he has a bad night or if he doesn't nap that day. Before I might have really worried about it. Like feel like he needs to nap. Like he's a toddler, he needs to nap. No, he doesn't. He's
Yeah,
fine. He can go a day
exactly.
without a nap.
Yeah.
Um,
It's almost this general realization that there's so many aspects of life that we cannot control, and just not attempting to control them just gives us a lot of freedom and peace of mind.
yes, yeah. And I think in my career in general too, like I've been a bit more natto about it. Like I'm venturing to do a lot of photography, like I said, wildlife and landscape because I live on Vancouver Island, so it's beautiful here. Um, and like I'm just sort of taking it where I want to take it, rather as opposed to like being really stringent about what I think it should be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm much less stringent about my own sleep and about certain other areas in life. And another thing I wanted to say too was during my sleep struggles, like in the winter, sometimes I like to enjoy like a stout beer, and there's this one I really enjoy with coffee and chocolate. And I remember buying it one day and forgetting it had coffee in it and getting it home, opening it and being like, "Oh no, I can't drink this. It has coffee in it." So I gave it to my husband. And then once I just stopped worrying about it, I would have them like right before bed. And it was almost like I was like, "Bring it on. Like
Yeah,
keep me
exactly.
awake." And never was it a problem. Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, let's conclude there. It was really, really great to hear your story, Laura. So glad people. And by the way, shout out to everyone on Reddit. That's telling people about our channel. That's amazing.
Yep.
So yeah, thanks so much for being on, Laura, and just be
Yeah.
in touch.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye now.
Hi, it's me, Coach Daniel, and I hope you found the video you just saw full of inspirational content and full of educational content as well, because that's really what we try to do here in the school. We try to educate and inspire. And if you're finding that things are clicking for you and sleep is happening easier and you're leaving the struggle, please let us know in the comment section, because we live for that. We live for hearing how somebody is finding sleep and life becoming lighter and easier. And not only are you doing us a huge favor as sleep coaches and like filling our tank with that gas that makes us never want to stop doing this, but you're also helping the community. You're helping by inspiring other people, and by commenting, you're telling YouTube that this was interesting, and YouTube feeds our content to more people so that they can discover our teachings and things get easier for them. So again, if you found things getting easier for you, please let us know in the comment section. We can't wait to hear from you.